The White House is hosting dozens of African leaders in Washington for a three-day summit beginning today. The president says the event will show, quote, the importance of U.S. Africa relations and will include discussions on topics such as trade, climate, and more. This is only the second summit of its kind. Former President Barack Obama held the first one in 2014. So CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe is at the White House with a preview of the summit. So we have 40-odd leaders or representatives of different countries from Africa. But the last time we had a summit like this was in 2014. And critics have sort of pointed out there wasn't much in the way of follow-up after that. You know, how's the Biden administration going to sort of prove, if you will, for lack of a better word, that this summit is worthwhile and eventually there will be deliverables?
That's a good question, Anne Marie. We're still waiting to hear a little more specifics on what exactly the president will announce and what African leaders will walk away from after this summit. As you said, the first one since 2014. It begins today with the Secretary of State and the Vice President kicking things off here in Washington. The President speaks tomorrow. Among other things, we're expecting a collection of U.S. companies to announce more investment on the continent, and we are going to probably get confirmation that the President is planning to make a multi-country visit to the continent as well next year, his first and the first of a U.S. president since Barack Obama. The Secretary of State has made 3 trips to Africa in the past year or so, preparing for this summit and laying the groundwork for a presidential visit. Part of why they're doing this, though, here in the United States has less to do with Africa and more to do with China and Russia and other countries that are also trying to wield influence and build up their economic power on what is the world's poorest but fastest growing continent. China, of course, invests hundreds of billions of dollars and is the biggest loaner, in essence, to African countries. Russia is also a big provider of military equipment to countries there. Turkey and the United Arab Emirates, for example, have also become big influences in that part of the world as well, helping build up the infrastructure of those countries. All of these bigger powers understand there is economic development opportunity there. There are geopolitical reasons to get involved and to be influential, and that's why the United States is eager to make sure that they, too, are doing what they can to invest in Africa and keep those countries on their side.
How much of a, I guess, hump is this going to be, though, for the administration to sort of get over? You know, it's been a number of years now that China has been investing in Africa. That President Xi Jinping has had one-on-ones with certain African leaders. I don't think, you know, President Biden has done that. There are no bilateral meetings planned when it comes to this summit. And, you know, one thing that China's not so bothered by is, you know, political turmoil in certain countries. And we know there are a handful of countries who were not invited to this summit because of that.
Well, we know he's going to have a series of meetings with leaders from those countries. He's hosting them for dinner as well. And it's essentially just the president, those leaders, their spouses, all here in the White House for several hours tomorrow night. The White House emphasizing that is a really big and unique opportunity for these leaders to bring up issues or to talk to the president specifically about issues of concern. He will be giving a speech as well while he's meeting with them tomorrow on African development issues. Forgive the lawn equipment as it goes by there. And then they're hoping that with his visit next year, that it helps bolster, you know, the commitment that the United States can make to the continent and demonstrate that they're serious about it. But you're right. China, for example, invested something like $250 billion across Africa last year. The United States only about $60 billion. So there's a big gap to make up. It may never get made up, but they're certainly trying to demonstrate that the United States can be an influence and a partner to those countries as well.
You know, the first time was one thing. The second time, I feel like he's trolling you a little bit. But I want to get this last question in because it's an important one. One thing that the White House has said that it will do, it announced that it's going to be backing a permanent spot for the African Union in the G20, which I think is a pretty big deal. Can we talk about that?
Well, South Africa is the only country in Africa that is a member of the G20 right now. The argument that the United States will make on the African Union's behalf is, given their collective buying and economic power, they should be at the table for these kinds of major international organizations. They're also going to boost African support or representation at the International Monetary Fund. All of it, again, designed to say, look, you can work with China, you can buy weapons from Russia, but you should be, and we welcome you working with us as well. You read what African leaders are saying, and they say, look, we don't want to pick sides. We want to work with everyone because we understand that there's economic development opportunities on this continent, and we want to get it from as many people as we can.
Ed O'Keefe, thank you so much. That was great. Thank you.